Yeah, initially, well, they found evidence of this engagement between the Apaches and the Greys, and they also found various levels of technology strewn about the facility. And the deeper they went into the facility, they began to discover these rooms which they thought were some type of like a religious type archive, various, types of libraries of sorts, which held all these great archaeological tablets, as they later came to refer to these. The guide who took us up there said that this summer he had took 2 players from the Phoenix Suns basketball team up there on a hunt. Halfway up towards the plateau of the Mesa, there was an area where they were going to be doing some elk hunting. They were encountered by 3 military personnel. Now, they could not discern what branch of the military they were from, but they told the guide and his guest, "You are violating a restricted area and you need to vacate the premises immediately." Now, he turned to them and told them, "No, I'm a Jicarilla Apache. This is sovereign land, and I have every right to be there." And in turn, they told him, "Today, you are not, and you are violating a restricted area." And they pointed AR-15 rifles at them and told them to leave. When he got back to the township, there had been similar stories circulating for about a week. So something was happening in Dulce this summer. Denver International is one of the most recent underground facilities that's been created as part of this continuity of government program, whereby in the event of some type of catastrophic, disaster, the executive administration, the Senate, Congress, everyone would be shipped over to Denver International, to this massive underground facility. The high number of incidents of crashed UFOs throughout the Four Corners area, in particular New Mexico. We're talking about Aztec, San Antonio, New Mexico, Roswell, Alamogordo, all these various crashes that occurred there in New Mexico. They all came about as this Project Diana, which had to do with this radar technology utilizing microwaves. And we found that it had a devastating effect on the UFO craft that the Greys from Dulce utilized. They were utilizing these craft to attain natural resources, to abduct humans, which is one of the things we understood, which they no longer do. And it all has to do with Project Diana, and the Colonel brilliantly documents how that, the involvement of that technology precipitated all of these crash events. When you look at the Grey archaeological tablets and you understand the history behind them, you'll find that there's a connection back to the ancient Sumerian civilization. Actually, it predates that. Most people don't realize that the progenitors are the descendants of the Anunnaki. The Greys essentially are the Igigi. So everything in the Grey archaeological tablet tells us the history of ancient Sumer and even older Near East region cultures that predate the Sumerians. And now we're seeing proof of this with the discovery in southeastern Turkey of Göbekli Tepe, which is a sanctuary that's dating to 12,500 years old, which predates the Sumerians. And this archaeological find has reptilian statues. And strangely enough, that date, 12,500 years ago, resonates with many other ancient finds around the world. Right now I'm working on an investigation called Project Leonid, which has to do with this forthcoming space war between a Western coalition and the Chinese. Now, it's not necessarily about the West versus the Chinese as much as it is humans versus alien human hybrids. Who are controlling this. When I was in Dulce, I conducted an interview with a person. He's the chief of police of a neighboring community. He just blew me away, George. He drew a picture of a craft that he had seen when he was a police officer there on the Jicarilla Reservation. And this sketch that he drew was exactly the same craft that had been drawn years before by Paul Bennewitz. It was a teardrop-shaped craft that flared out, and it had a cockpit in it. And what was interesting is that this person said that in the cockpit, as this craft hovered over him and his officer, a fellow police officer of the Jicarilla, an event in which they reported to the Jicarilla and Kirtland Air Force Base that there was a being inside of the cockpit, and there was this illuminated lavender or purplish light emitted from the craft. Now, this is what the Colonel states the lighting systems within Dulce are colored. The other thing is that when I was in Dulce, prior to my planned trip or even announcement that I was going to Dulce, I had received a call late one evening from a Jicarilla family that they had seen a blue flash of light throughout, throughout the sky. It was coupled with the sound of what appeared to be like a sonic boom. When they went outside to see what was happening, they observed directly over the Archuleta Mesa only what could be described as 2 World War II era planes engaged in a full-fledged dogfight. The witnesses said that they saw live ammunition being fired at one another before both planes just simply vanished atop the mesa into thin air. This engagement lasted for a full 90 seconds. Without time to get a camera, one 26-year-old witness that I interviewed, he drew from memory what he had saw. And we took his sketch and identified 2 planes, and we were just simply astounded. What we believed they saw was a Messerschmitt Bf-109 engaged with a Lockheed P-38 Lightning.
Wow.
Both are World War II fighters, and the level of recollection from this person who has no interest in World War II or any knowledge of aviation was just amazing. This tells me, George, that a much larger picture is beginning to emerge at Dulce, that other levels of research and development, in this case, experimentation with time vortices, are occurring there. One of the things that I also want to tell you, George, was that chief of police that I spoke with in front of witnesses, he admitted to there being holographic entrances in the mesa, where he and other police officers had witnessed craft coming and going from into the mesa and out of the mesa. And the other thing that he admitted to was that in 1979, there were 2 individuals. There was a New Mexico State police officer, it was not Gabe Valdez, and there was a high-ranking Jicarilla police officer who were flown in. They were helicoptered into the southwest entrance of the Dulce facility. He disclosed to me their identities, and I confirmed this with another individual who's an investigator in Dulce. I'm telling you, this is a very real event. This is not a joke. Something happened there in 1979, and there is still a facility in Dulce. Immense propagation and installation of base transceiver systems all over the world, even in rural areas. When you look at the coverage maps of these of carriers that install base transceiver systems for cell towers everywhere, just think about the implications on how the human brain can be manipulated by technology, radio wave technology. So, you can affect, an emotional, it could trigger an emotional state or behavioral state in a human. Project Leonid has to do with the low Earth orbiting, multifaceted weapon system that has the potential to turn against humanity. And it's a very dangerous system, and multiple engineers have already lost their lives as a result of working on this project. And at the moment, I don't want to talk about these nanosatellites too much. Maybe at some point in the future, George, I'll share that with you, but it's just a little bit too involved, and last night I was warned not to talk about them. I identified a connection between Dulce and the Cabazon-Wackenhut facility in California, and multiple people died as a result of the Cabazon-Wackenhut facility. You had Eisman, who was an attorney who was murdered. You had Danny Casolaro, who was a freelance journalist who was murdered. And Danny Casolaro in particular, because he had uncovered information about the Gray connection between Dulce and Cabazon-Wackenhut. So, yeah, I'm well aware of that. Well, I met with the colonel, who claims to have met and worked with alongside Grace in Dulce. There are underground facilities just about in every state of in the Union. There's underground facilities everywhere, from the East Coast to the West Coast. There's one in Hawaii. The Chengdu district of China has a massive underground facility. Some of these facilities go down as deep as 5 miles. So it depends on what the purpose of the underground facility is, what they're utilizing it for, and who is working at those depths. There's a lot of different stories out there about Dulce, and I'm inclined to believe that some of them do contain factual, data with respect to what occurred there in 1979, but others, I think, are just not as credible as the information that I received from the colonel, because it's just way too detailed for any one person to be able to create is just way too much information, down to the structure of the organization that runs the facility, to the history of the discovery.